What's going on, workforce? Brian here, and today we're talking about Summoner and all that is Summoner. So how we're breaking these up is that we've got so much to talk about. You've got PvE, PvP, the controller layout, HUD layout, the actions, the traits, the pets. So we're breaking these up into multiple videos to try to keep them a little bit shorter and a little bit more to the point. So if you're looking for just something about the layout and you don't care about like how the pet works, or you don't care about PvP, then you don't have to worry about sitting through just hours of video to watch it. That being said, in the description below, you should be able to see all the videos that relate to the Summoner, level 70, controller, and just Summoner guides, the information that you need to hopefully be the best Summoner you can be. So without making this intro forever, let's go ahead and just do this thing and let me know what you think in the comments below. Hey everybody, welcome to the controller layout and HUD guide. We're going to be talking about the Summoner abilities and how I've got them laid out in my hotbar, and as well as my Cross Hotbar and the extended hotbar. There's so many hotbars in this game, guys. It's great. Anyway, as an avid controller player, I put these guides together to really kind of focus in on kind of my thoughts behind how I've got these abilities laid out in and of themselves. Now, this is all just my opinion and this is all just my experience. Hopefully from this video, you get an idea of how to lay out your hotbars and really is what's going to work best for you. There's really no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of how it feels and how you adjust to it. This is set for level 70, but you can use these abilities and kind of place them for really any level range in and of themselves. Obviously, you've got more abilities at 70 than you do at 60 and earlier, but this should really work for you, and at least I hope it does. So let's go ahead and get started. So starting with hotbar 3, you can see that I've got my pet abilities right here. Now, if I summon a different pet, you're going to see that this changes. So if I bring out Ifrit, you can see that this changes. And we're going to cover how that happens in the macro section of this video in and of itself. But let's go ahead and move the camera so that way you're not staring at Ifrit's butt the whole time. So I've got the 4 pet abilities that I want to have communicated on cooldown. So what abilities those are really aren't important. We've covered the different pet abilities in a separate video. I'd recommend that you take a look at the description below to get more information on those. The first ability that I want to communicate to myself is Aether Pact. This has a 90-second recast, and this orders my pet to use devotion on a party member that I'm nearest to. So it's important that I want to make sure I kind of keep that up and going because it's just going to help out the party. It also helps if I've got my companion with me. So even if I'm solo, Aether Pact will enhance my companion. So it's hugely important. Dreadworm Trance, the big ability that came in Heaven's Word, still is equally important here, probably even more so. I have it dead in center to communicate to me that it is available and to be used. This is again just to communicate to me, hey, you might want to use this. Ideally, you're kind of paying attention, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with having a helper every now and then. Death Flare is that instant ability that is going to do a lot of damage at a potency of 400. Here, it's next to here because these two kinds of repair, and this brings in Summon Bahamut. So I've added this to my hotbar 3 cooldowns ability because I want to make sure that I never miss a chance to bring out Demo Bahamut, because not only is it cool, but the damage is just phenomenal. Now I've added Sprint here because Sprint costs no TP, it's got a long cooldown now, and I've added it to all jobs. I want to make sure that from an ability to get out of stuff that I have access to Sprint, and I want to know if it is available to me at all times. And so I've actually added Sprint to this cooldown bar. Swift Cast because it's awesome. And you always want to make sure that you know when it's ready. Now you don't see some of these abilities within kind of this wheelhouse, and that's why I want to make sure that they're always communicating their cooldown to me, even if I don't have access to them from my main hotbar. Same thing goes for Rouse. We talked about this heavily in our actions abilities video, and I want to make sure I know whenever it's off cooldown so it's ready to use. And Lucid Dreaming. Now I have this ability easily accessible here, but I also want to make sure that in case I'm more focused on the right side, that it's always within my grasp to see that it's ready to use. So everybody, that is hotbar 3. So let's start over here with my double cross hotbar. I've got Tribind, Erase, Summon Bahamut, and Max Potion of Intelligence. These Max Potion of Intelligence are just going to increase your DPS output. And I've got it set to where whenever I use an item or an ability here, that it's going to automatically return me to the left hotbar. But this is how I can access Summon Bahamut whenever he's up and ready, and that's why it's also important here, because most likely I'm spending time holding down the right trigger and on the right side. So if you think about it, most of my time is spent looking on this side of the hotbar, and I've got Summon Bahamut over here on the left side. So that's why this is here to communicate, hey, don't forget to call him out. On the left side, we're going to start here and go kind of in a wheelhouse. I've got Shadow Flare macro, which will jump into the macro section here at the end of this video. Got Enkindle. Got my Addle, and you can think of Addle in this spot as any ability that is a part of your cross roll. So whether you're taking Addle or if you're taking any of those other abilities, that's kind of where this spot exists. So you can replace Addle with whatever you're using cross roll. And then Lucid Dreaming, same kind of thing. So these are two cross roll abilities. I recommend Lucid Dreaming because with the ability to continue to refresh my own MP, it allows me to get off more Ruin 3s than ever before. And then Ruin 3 has that additional potency, and it can also be upgraded to Ruin 4, which has a reduced MP cost regardless. It just helps with me with better MP management, but I'll let you make that call. Here I've got my Dreadworm Trance, Enkindle Bahamut, Death Flare, and then here I've got Ruin. The reason I have Ruin is because Ruin does not get upgraded to Ruin 2, and because I was running leveling roulettes for this job, that I needed a way to access Ruin really easily. This is going to be replaced here at some point, so feel free to make this just kind of a wild card slot for whatever you feel makes the most sense for you. On the right hand side, I have the Wheel of Pain. So I've got Fester, Pain Flare, Energy Drain, and Bane. These four abilities all use Aether Flow, so it's really, I kind of put them all together. So if I really want to get into Dreadworm Trance really quickly, Fester, Pain Flare, Energy Drain. Or you can use any of these abilities because they've got a nice little 5-second recast time, with the exception of Energy Drain, which is 3 seconds. Bane is great, but it only applies your Ethereal Attunement if it spreads damage. Same thing with Fester. So if they do not have Bio or Miasma and you use Fester, you're not going to get your Ethereal Attunement, you're going to get out of sync, and it's just not going to be any fun at that point. So anyway, just be aware of those positionals and where you end up placing them in the long run. Because of the Ethereal Attunement and because of the Aether Flow cost, I kind of group them together so that mentally they're positioned where I want them to be. Here, because of the way I want my pets to act, and if you want to have real control over your DPS, you want to have real control over your pets. And so you want to be able to have them use their non-signature ability, but their ability that you want to have the most control over in this position. So if I bring out my caster, you can see that this is now replaced with Contagion. So this is one of those optional spots that I actually use the macros to place those abilities. Contagion completely changed. We talked about it in the previous video, but it no longer extends the duration of your dots, rather than increases the damage taken by your target for magic damage. So it's important to apply this before you apply Tri-Disaster in this case. Before you want to Tri-Disaster then Contagion, now you want Contagion then Tri-Disaster. And this is really powerful. This adds an additional 10%. So you have a lot of ways to kind of boost up your damage by a certain percentage. So do your best to control and manage that. I'll show you how to automatically replace these here in the macro section just in a minute. We already covered Tri-Disaster. Here's Ruin 3. It automatically upgrades to Ruin 4 if triggered, and here's Ruin 2. Because you might be on the move, Ruin 2 has no cast time, so you can still output damage, and that's really important. The only weird thing is that, again, Ruin 1 in and of itself, if you don't have access to Ruin 2, you need access to that. So Ruin doesn't upgrade to Ruin 2. We talked about it a little bit. It seems a little bit weird, but I'll leave that up to you. But I find it because if you're on the move, holding and then pressing A, it's very easy to do and be able to pay attention to what's going on. On the right hand side, we got Aether Flow, Miasma 3, Bio 3, and then Drain. Drain again is that optional cross roll ability, so feel free to kind of put it wherever you want it. Feel free to replace this with whatever abilities you're using from your cross roll. Now Aether Flow again is on that 60-second recast. You don't really need access to it. Before I had it within here, so if you go look at my other guides, I've shifted that over into here and placed it in the same spot that I have for my Scholar. Because they both need access to it, it just becomes more muscle memory than anything else. So that's the main setup, but let's talk about the expanded hotbar. So holding left trigger and then right trigger brings us up. Now you can set this to any hotbar, but what I actually have it set to is hotbar 2. So you can see my left side hotbar 2. Here's I've got access to Swiftcast, here's I've got access to Aether Pact, and here's where I have access to Rouse. All abilities that are on the hotbar 3 to communicate that cooldown. I also have access to Resurrection in case I need a res, and I also have access to Physic in case I need to cure. Here's where I can summon any of my 3 pets, and with those summons you can see that these are all macros, and that's how I replace these actions. So that is listed there. So let's go ahead and jump into my macro section real quick, and then we'll jump into our settings to wrap up this video. So here you can see my 3 summon macros. What it is I'm just summoning out my pet. And then with the C hotbar, In the hotbar, this is how I replace those abilities listed here. I've done a specific video on these macros themselves, and I'll be sure to include the link in the description below, but I want to highlight all three for you without having to navigate too much within this own video to find out this information. I wanted to give it to you here. So hotbar and C hotbar, you can set your pet abilities using this macro. There's a huge dictionary of text commands that you can use, and I'll also try to include that link in the description below as well, but I wanted to give you just quick access to all three. Now, how you position them and where you position them, you can put those any which way you want. It's really up to you. The last macro, and you can see that I've highly reduced the need of macros on my summoner outside of summon and shadow flare. Shadow flare is, I've got the macro icon set for shadow flare, and I'm just using the shadow flare ability with this T command. This means the target that I'm selecting. This means it's going to place it on the target that I'm selecting. Let me kind of demonstrate that for you guys here and now. So even if it's me, I can shadow flare, and it's going to put that ability right around me. If I don't have that T, it's going to ask me to position it, and from a controller perspective, it's just easier to use that T command because you're already targeting the target you want it placed. But if you find that annoying, you can use the old way in which you can use the old way with the mouse or with your controller, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because from a speed perspective, the macro in this case adds so much less downtime. Okay, so let's jump into character configuration, hotbar settings, and custom. This is where you enable your expanded cross hotbar and your double cross hotbar and what hotbars they use. So you can see we talked about my double cross hotbar left and right. So here's where they're set. They're set to my cross hotbar 3 left and right, and that's how you're going to put those actions together, and I'll show that here in a second. The enable expanded is the left trigger and right trigger. So you can see cross hotbar 2 left is summoner abilities, but the expanded RT and then LT is all abilities for all jobs. So I've got 7 right shared. This is where I've got sprint, this is where I've got my mounts, this is where I've got my limit break, and this is where I've got targeting macros as well as a countdown macro. So it makes a lot of sense there. You can always see and manage your sharing via this tab, and we have an awesome guide that talks about all of these settings as well. Again, links are in the description below. But the real important one is enabling cross hotbar 3 left and right for the double cross hotbar. So in order to manage that though, you can't drag and drop right on here. You have to go to hotbar 3 because this is just kind of a shortcut there. So, you know, we've already covered the abilities, but this is how they're managed. If I kind of move them around, you can see that they're automatically reflected there, and that's just because these are pointed here. You can set your double cross hotbar to actually use 8 positions, but this is going to be, you know, your ABXY or your, you know, or X circle, triangle, square if you're on the PlayStation 4. And that pretty much is it. That wraps up my hotbar layout settings and my controller guide for Summoner at level 70. Again, if you haven't seen any of the other videos regarding kind of the actions, the detailed thoughts on that, on the pets and the traits, be sure to check the description below to be able to make sure you have access to all those videos. And let us know what else you'd like to see regarding Summoner in this regards. But for Work to Game, my name's Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video, and we hope to see you in our next. But until then, we hope you have a fantastic day. Take care. Hey everybody, Brian and Chuck here for Work to Game. Chuck wants to tell you that you should totally subscribe to the channel. And that you should totally hit that like button. Oh, and then we also got t-shirts on sale for some reason. That's a little bit mean, Chuck. I'm not crazy.